In the dungeons we slay, in the dragon's den we play. Brings a glass to the heroes who battle night and day. With a fiddle and a hurdy-gurdy, we'll sing the tales of old. In the tavern we gather, where the stories unfold.
And
In the
Beirun and
moonlight we roam
Beoruni
through.
and Bay of Runlatha, um, all those different sort of convergent names, and a little bit of how that played into the history.
Yeah, so Eric has done a lot of background work in relation to the history of the North, because we've been working for a long time on what can best be described as elf-centered adventures. The first of which that we did work on together was Crown of Eolan, which has kind of been is in hiatus at the moment because we've moved on to another project called Horde of Mists. But both of them have a significant historical basis to them, and that, of course, because when you're obsessed, involves mapping out lots of history in detail, just so everything makes sense. Why do things happen? They happen because of this. In the context of the Uthgardt, we found that there was a lot of wiggle room in relation to their early history. As Eric mentioned, they had the Netherese influence. We had the Northman slash Roathan influence, and then we realised that there had to be other humans in the north, before the Netherese arrived, before the Roathans arrived from across the seas. And so we found a few references and realized that this was really an Elvish playground. And so we had to bind in the Elvish influences into that. Um, the sources, forgotten, FR5, the North to a lesser extent, and Eric's work in Powers and Pantheons dealt with this concept of Bearuna, this Baron, the son of Bearuna, and other bits and pieces. And lots of that required a bit of massaging to hopefully, for the reader, make sense. But what we were trying to show was that the Realms has a lot of aspects in terms of history over many years of being published. Some throwaway lines that are challenging to build in, but we thought that we were effectively creating a new barbarian group from many disparate places and sources. And what I tried to do in the tribe write-ups that I had a hand in was to try and come up with something different origin-wise, to look at different ways that various specific tribes came into being, for variety and, more importantly, for to give inspiration to people interested in the Realms lore, or more importantly, people running games there, to bring in disparate elements. So, my favorite, and to be honest, I can't actually remember how this happened, but the Black Lion tribe has a significant Kalashite influence. And that was because we'd done some work on one of Ed's throwaway lines about a place called Sindulspar, in Volo's Guide to the North, which had a significant Kalimshan connection. And we just thought it would be cool to have the genesis of an Uthgardt race come from somewhere other than the north, and other than across the seas, and other than from Netheril. We had previously done some work based on Elaine Cunningham's Thornhold novel and the Caradoon family, which is a whole other box of nuts and dice and stuff. It's another convoluted essay into the realms. We'll showcase it one day in some shape, way, or form. But the little sidebar about the what eventually in the novels became the Kesef Bane, or the Fenris Bane siege engine, is a glimpse into some of the stuff that we had to grapple with. But on the whole, we looked at the situation very broadly and tried to weave in lots of different references based upon lots of background work that we'd been doing for many years on the history of the North in the context of the elves, the dwarves, and the other races. Eric's favourite thing in the world is to work out why particular creatures exist in particular areas. And so that it always comes down to, well, why are giants there? Why are trolls there? Why are the elves here and not here? And things like that. And so when
And
you
why
answer
did
those
this
types,
happen when?
yeah,
When it
and so when
happened.
you answer
Why
those
do
types of
gnomes
questions,
exist?
yeah,
Hey, that's just wrong.
because they're cool. And so when you ask yourselves those sorts of questions and try and find some answers, that's when the really good realms lore starts flowing. And we hope you've seen some of that in this article.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things is in some respects, the Uthgardt are version three of the barbarians, right? The way we worked out the history, because Elves of Evermeet had a bunch of totems, spirits that lined up really well with some of the Uthgardt's totem spirits. We actually came up with the idea that the Moonlands used to be home, 25,000 years ago to Lothari tribes. Those are like those elven werewolves. And so they had worshipped the totem spirits, and then they were succeeded by the Lorndesser, which was a human tribe that sort of adopted those elven totem spirits. And then they were succeeded by the Beoruni, who fled the fall of Ilisk. And they sort of adopted the totem spirits and added more to it. And then when the Netherese showed up and were sort of adopted into the Beoruni tribes, that's really where the Uthgardt tribes emerged. And they too worship the same totem spirits. So you sort of have, you think of them as this monolithic culture, but they're really sort of version three, version four of this totem spirit worshiping culture in the north. Um, Switching gears a little bit, Tom. So a lot of this was written looking backwards, right, to 1E and 2E stuff and integrating it. But we also wanted to bring it forward to 5E. Do you want to talk a little bit about the challenges with that and what you ended up doing to make this useful for players in the 5E era?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the things was just looking to see what gaps there were in the current 5e um, mechanics, like player mechanics in particular, that would work for the Uthgardt, and trying to match up the different tribe cultures with what sort of what classes and subclasses they might be. So created a table that sort of said, hey, if you're from this tribe, these are the more common classes. I mean, we don't want to pigeonhole anybody into forcing them into being, you know, this or that. I mean, players have their own agency and they can be as unique as they want to be. But if people want to play to type or they want to be part of that dominant culture of that particular tribe, then there's some guidance here about what that might look like. And conversely, if the DM wants to create characters that are more ingrained in that tribe, this gives some guidance on that as well. So trying to look at that, and then I started looking at, well, all right, so then druids can turn into wild shapes. So what are the common wild shapes that exist? Where are the gaps for that? And looking at that, and then I had started fiddling some time ago with a spell casting barbarian subclass, and so updated that and looked at some of the cleric subclasses and looking at where the Uthgardt were worshiping maybe some other gods like Oral, and so there's a winter domain, or they were worshiping Helm, and so there's a sentinel domain, or and then of course Uthgar himself, there's a wrath domain, and most of those domains are broad enough that people could apply them to any campaign, even outside of the Uthgardt, certainly, right? I mean, the oral domain could apply, I mean, a cold domain, a winter domain could apply to like any campaign setting. It doesn't have to be um, limited to just this one. Likewise, we had the one that I think was maybe the most unique was we started talking about how we wanted to have um, we wanted to update the old like what was called the Witch Doctor back in first edition.
Mm-hmm.
And we started toying with that and looking at the various iterations of the Witch Doctor that existed in the various editions of the game. And obviously, there are some potentially problematic ideas around that concept. Um, but then, in fifth edition, they introduced this idea of of dragons existing across the multiverse and having like sort of echoes of themselves across the multiverse. and that the most powerful dragons are able to combine their echoes into one creature. And so looking at Elrim and the Great Worm Tribe, we sort of evolved that into a subclass specific sort of to that, but it could be again broader than that, right? So this became the Magus of the Ancients, which George helped develop as well, um, and where a class where they are sort of taught the original magic by the dragons, um, and so they have sort of an almost shamanistic witch doctor-esque kind of feel to them in some ways, but they are wizards. Um, so really kind of thought that was kind of a fun class to dealing with different spirits and getting different aspects of powers from that sort of echoing across the multiverse. Um, and then you and I talked about updating the Uthgardt that fell into the Underdark,
Mhm.
um, and became deep folk, became Grimlocks and Underfolk. So we updated those, those and then those that became uh, had some Fey heritage. And as I had been developing that sort of separately on something else, I had been looking at spirit folk more broadly, and spirit folk were um, descended from various Fey, Fey or various spirit influences, which could have been nature spirits or could have been fairy spirits. And so we sort of expanded that out and had spirit folk with a Fey lineage, or what was more traditionally in the old Oriental adventures or um, game, the jungle, mountain, and river lineages as well. Um, so looking at all of that, and then had a few spells, and then create updated the old my old sliver, which was uh, an outsider, a servant, a celestial servant of Selene that had appeared in Dragon many moons ago, if you will.
But
Yeah.
That was actually one of the cool things in writing up the Red Tiger tribe, finding that monster in your article, Tom, and it seemed a really good fit for sort of a celestial watching over a tribe that had a lycanthropy running through it in terms of the were tiger and Talrun of the Tent being a were tiger and things like that. And so finding that celestial in your article, I thought it was a perfect fit for having a little watching over group for the tribe, and it was a lovely wheel coming full circle realms law moment when I managed to weave that in. That was really fun.
Yeah, no, I mean it was really cool. I mean, and frankly, it was neat that you thought of it and I didn't. I mean, like, it was my creature, but you were the one who thought about including it. So
you may have created it, Tom, but we stole it.
I mean,
Stole it
that sort of stuff
unabashedly.
happens all the time, right? I mean, it's like
Yeah.
even in the game that we play sometimes the game we play on Saturday nights, you keep pulling lore from that the rest of us wrote, and we're all like, "Where did that come from?" And you're like, "No, you wrote
But it is a pointer to the fan base about just how much really great content is out there. If you just do a bit of digging, if you manage to access some of these sources, there are just so many wonderful things just sitting there latent, just fallow, waiting to be used and mined and to enhance anyone's campaign and game. And it can just be a monster. It can be a single magic item. It can be all sorts of things. But it's a great joy of the realms with just so many years of fantastic products that there's so many opportunities out there. So, I tell the fans all the time, the realms didn't start with third edition or fifth edition, etc. It started a long time before that. It started before there was a Dungeons and Dragons game. And just keep looking at the old stuff. Things pop up that are really, really cool.
And I don't mind. You can draw from anywhere, anybody's stuff to enrich your realms. To me, that's one of the chief delights of everybody else working on the realms, in that my world feels alive to me now and can surprise me because other people are adding stuff to it. So for those who go, yeah, but Ed didn't write it, so it's not canon. No, 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 no. From the very beginning, everybody has cooked in this crowded kitchen and thrown food at each other and had, a repurposed what somebody, oh, that sauce is scorching. Okay, it's going to be caramelized now, and we'll use it over here. So there's nothing wrong with that. Use everything you love about the realms in your campaign. If something doesn't seem to fit to you, just de-emphasize it. But it's okay.
Was there anything in what you read, Ed, that surprised you in this Uthgardt thing? Good or
Not
bad?
not huge surprises, no, because um, I I treat the Uthgardt as, oh, okay, whatever I'm reading here is the history of the Uthgardt. So um, there was nothing that made me go, whoa, where did that come from? It was more like, okay, yeah, yeah, okay, yeah, oh,
Good.
cool, okay, yeah, okay. So, which is, it just means you everything is canon. You could just use the thing; it all fits. In my mind, I read it, I go, yep, this is the realms. So I don't go, oh, well, you shouldn't have done this on this page. You should. No, I just go, okay, this is the realms. I get it. So yeah, it was great. Write another one. Come on, guys, we're waiting. It's been like 2 days. Where's the next one?
Well, that's
it's
part of
funny
the
you
problem.
say
I have
that.
like
Okay.
5 going at once.
On the next magic weapon, it's going to be Bob the Axe. It's a sentient axe. His name is Bob, and George loves the name.
Indeed.
The best thing
Well-
about it is it pulls you through a portal about once every 5 minutes. Because
Bob
George
has
loves portals.
Yeah, sentimental value to me because my first goldfish was named Bob, which was kind of prophetic at the end, but that's fine.
Oh dear! And how did Bob end?
That was harsh.
He was bobbing in the end, but that's fine. We then segue to having children, which worked out fine, I think.
Hopefully, they're not bobbing.
So actually, Ed, that does bring up one point. Like when we were working out all these different tribes, like George mentioned earlier, we were trying really hard to give each tribe a unique origin, right? A lot of them are Netherese, in crossing with Bayaruni, but like the Red Pony tribe was descended from like the Rengarth barbarians, and the Griffin tribe is from the Griffin riders who were defending one of the flying cities. And, it kind of each one was a little bit different, and we tried to make it unique. Um, but I think one of the roots of the whole thing was the general concept of Netheril falling and this diaspora of magic, which I think you rooted pretty deeply in the setting. And I didn't know if you wanted to talk any more about your thoughts on that and why you had done that in the first place.
I did that in the first place, so there was a prehistory. Things didn't start when the player characters walked onto the stage.
Mm-hmm.
There were things that are mysterious and buried in the past that, quote, everybody knows. And of course, when I say, quote, everybody knows different myths about it, which they are certain is correct. And then the tribe or the people living next door think they're full of it because their myth is different, that sort of thing. And I wanted that because, again, maximum play possibilities. And, from my point of view, I wanted a time when magic in the hands of humans was greater than it is now. So there could be forgotten magic, and there could be stuff in the past where people could do things on a daily basis with magic that magic is too valuable, too rare, too expensive, too difficult to do now. And that gives you a reason to have treasure down in dungeons, magic being treasure, and the whole concept of Mistress Chosen wandering around and reseeding dungeons and tombs and other places with magic for people to find accounts for why there's still anything down there to find, and it wasn't found a century ago or last Thursday or whatever before your guys got down the dungeon. I had to have reasons for the illogical stuff in the game to be logical. in the
Yeah,
setting.
we actually tried to play with that, like in the elk tribe. We tried to build on what you were saying right there. So like I had read, I think it was a Finnish myth, something about reindeers following chrysoberyls scattered in the snow or something like that. And so that had led me to because you in the Covenant article had talked about, wizards manipulating the Uthgardt to fight the orcs, for instance.
Mhm.
And so I was like, well, maybe it went back further than that and had the idea that the Netherese were doing it too. And they sent out these rangers who would embed themselves in the tribe and they could drive the Uthgar around by basically sprinkling some gems with some magic mouths on them that got the Uthgar to think the gods were talking to them to go fight something, and that then led to I mean, that alone gave me the ability to put magic caches scattered around. Because then when Netherill's falling, those same rangers start hiding caches of magic in the north that the Netherese could then know about. I mean, that the Uthgard could then know about. And then we played with a short story, or I think it was a scene from Elminster in Hell. I don't remember where it's from. Fallon, he had a throne, he lived in the high forest, and that we had him exploiting the elk tribe to come find those Netherese caches. So like you could keep building on these things and integrating it into one story. And that's sort of the same thing we tried to do with each of the tribes. We tried to do the same thing with the Blue Bear tribe. In some respects, I think the Blue Bear tribe, for me at least, is what started this project. And the reason is because the Blue Bear tribe, uh, when the North box set came out, there was a group of us, Ed, you, me, Steven, Julia, Jim, who rewrote a large amount of it at the last minute, if you
Yeah.
remember those days. And I'll just leave it at that.
Those things never happen.
And one of the things that happened was in that frantic weekend of rewriting, Stephen ended up with this super complicated story about Tantahagara and the fall of Hellgate Keep and the Blue Bear tribe and the corruption. And, he wrote it in a weekend and it was pretty coherent, but there were parts of it I was like, I don't understand this. I don't understand this. And that sort of led me into writing the initial, what I call, it was a sidebar when I started, because I love sidebars, Lament of the Blue Bear, which we turned into a Blue Bear tribe write-up, but basically explaining how the heck did all these weird elements that Stephen threw against the wall add up into a story. And then we had this history of the Blue Bear tribe that went back, I think, 2,000 years. And then once you realized that they had that story, then what was the tree ghost story? Once they had that story, then what was the elk story and what was the griffin story? And it kind of blew from there. So, it's those complicated histories that we were trying to expand, and then we just kind of ran with it, and that gave us each tribe's little write-up. And in some respects, the parts that I disliked the most about previous Realms lore for me are the that rock that the river hits and diverts the course, and that's actually what you end up working out, trying to come up with a good story from, is the parts that you like the least, to try to make them something that you're like, oh, this now makes sense. So we had a lot of fun, I think, with that for a lot of them.
Yeah. Yeah. And the Netheril was the the catch-all excuse for ancient powerful magic, and stupid stuff like, why, if making magic items is so expensive and difficult and uses such expensive material components, why, oh why would you make cursed ones?
Yep.
And stuff like that. And then somebody else wants to add something else to the game, and you end up with the Nar tribe and their demon binding, and you sort of go, what? But I mean, that's the thing.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. But the moment the Realms has all this cool stuff added to it, it's carte blanche to go on adding more cool stuff, because there's always something you can hang an explanation on. And you guys have made careers out of hanging explanations on them. Thank goodness, because you have made the Realms make coherent sense for all of us out of some things that, because they were written in a weekend, or perhaps for other reasons, are less than coherent. Did I say that diplomatically enough?
I think so.
Okay, good.
Cool. The less coherent leads to more work, which is fun.
Yeah.
We march across the land we've known.
La 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 la. La 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 la.